Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Echo Wirm Live. I decided to do this kind of at the last minute, basically kind of waiting for when I had everything set up in the studio. If you guys missed the last, couple months here, I moved. So this is obviously a new studio, probably sounds a bit different. I do not, in fact, have any of my sound absorbing panels up. Eventually I'm going to put a drop down ceiling to kind of absorb more of the sound, and eventually these boxes will go away. You can see kind of over my shoulder I've started to put in my books, my very, very many books that all of my friends are very upset with me for having to move every single one of them into this new house. But yeah, that's kind of on the exciting end of things why I haven't maybe been responding to things on Discord or Patreon, and why the channel hasn't maybe been so active in terms of new content coming out aside from the daily chapters, simply because, moving is a pain. And when I explain, I got some more news coming in the future that I'll talk about on the channel. But moving, in addition to what else is going on, is it's been a hectic month and a half or so. So in a month or so, I'll probably tell you guys the other half of the exciting news in my life that is going on. So eventually, obviously, I set up the floor lights. I'm going to make them multicolored eventually, make it a little more colorful back there. You guys remember what the old studio looked like when it was at its prime. And then, God willing, I am probably going to put a fish tank behind me so you guys can have some friends while we do some live streams. But bunch of people in the chat. Hopefully this live stream doesn't die. We literally moved in yesterday. I do not have home Wi-Fi at the moment, so this stream is relying on the good grace of my phone. And so everything is going through my phone hotspot right now, which means that if I were to look at a live panel to see how many people are actively on the stream, it would crash my phone and you guys would not be able to be a part of the stream. So I do apologize if my responses to questions in the chat are delayed, but please do ask questions if you guys have any questions about the channel or about obviously stuff going on here with the move, or just what's coming up on the channel and what the expectations are now that the schedule was kind of delayed by about a month with everything going on within my life and within the life of the channel. So let's see here. Kylito's Corner says, what kind of fish? Good question. It's going to be a saltwater tank. I've always wanted a saltwater tank. Sorry, I'm holding my microphone right now, if you guys couldn't tell. It's not something I usually do. I'm still working out the kinks of this new studio. For sure, kind of the stereotypical Finding Nemo crowd. I'm not set on a blue tang right now, simply because blue tang farming there's some controversy over it. That's the dory type of fish. So for sure, clownfish. Clownfish are very easy to find and fairly safe to maintain. I really, in a perfect world, if I didn't have children or cats and had more room, I would get either sharks or rays. I'm obviously not talking great white sharks, but you can get some fairly the size of my arm size sharks that still kind of move the same and look a little bit the same, but you need a huge tank for it. And I don't have the room for it. So it'll be a little one behind me, but that's kind of the current plan. If once we get all settled in this house, we can afford it with stuff like that. But I do apologize for leaning into my camera. I can't quite see where my computer is. Flick Street Productions says, I read the Eric Schwabington first chapter. Is that your Percy Jackson inspired novel? Yes. So good. I'll probably mention this a couple of times. I have finished my first novel ever. The Radiation Effect is available on the channel in full, 35 chapters and an epilogue if you guys want to listen to it. It's the first full book that I've ever written. And I will be doing a sequel. Eventually, hopefully, it'll be a 7-book series. The second book, first chapter, will come out sometime in September here. But in addition to that, I am planning on continuing to write not a children's novel necessarily, but more targeted toward a Percy Jackson audience. And so it's definitely inspired by Percy Jackson and the writing style of Percy Jackson. I would say the content is more based around something like Harry Potter or even Star Wars. There's some influence in there. So if you guys haven't checked it out, the first chapter is available for free now on the channel. I think it's the most recent video that was posted as of me recording this. It's called Chapter 1. I don't read the terms and conditions, I think, is the title of the first chapter. But yeah, check it out. Let me know what you think. Mooney says, can I ask what happened to the main channel? Yes. YouTube has a policy that is not friendly to people who use copyrighted material, regardless of whether it's fair use or not. And a third party came in and basically swept the channel away because they didn't like the fact that I was recording Diary of a Wimpy Kid. So everything's still available on Patreon and Vimeo. There are links in the channel bio if you guys want to check out every single video that we've ever done. And then slowly but surely, our daily chapters are being re-uploaded. There's some limitations to re-uploading with new channels and that sort of thing. But you should be able to find in the playlist on this channel a whole bunch of stuff. There's links to Percy Jackson. It's not all up yet, but we are now through the entire first 5 Percy Jackson books, now on Son of Neptune. About 10 chapters a day are being uploaded over there. So, and there are some other channels. Harry Potter content somehow ended up on YouTube, I've noticed, of ours. And I'm totally fine with that if it doesn't affect me. But yeah, you guys can find everything on Patreon and Vimeo at the moment, and slowly we'll be working on bringing it back to YouTube. There's a panda coloration of clownfish that exists. I'll have to check that out. I've never heard of that. Saber6 says, how do you feel about the books where Percy has to get recommendation letters? I like the story, but the character personalities seem off. I'm not saying you're wrong by any means. I feel the opposite. I feel like the character personalities are consistent, but there's no stakes. And part of that is it's a prequel. And the problem with prequels is we know how it ends. Obviously, Percy gets his third recommendation letter because we know that he's going off to college in Trials of Apollo. And so the fact that it's a prequel, it kind of ruins the stakes and it doesn't have the grand heft of everything. But one positive of that is because we don't have a save the world type mentality of these books, it feels like we're just hanging out with our favorite characters, which is really nice. And having just casual time to spend with them in a full, 400, 500 page book. Son of Shadows says, whoa, it's crazy putting a face to the voice. Truly appreciate all the work you do for us. I just finished the Percy Jackson content, so I'm hoping to listen to your book tonight. Well, thank you. Yeah, like I said, first chapter of my new kind of Percy Jackson audience type. Basically, it's a book for like the Percy Jackson Harry Potter audience is the new one. And then there's the Radiation Effect, which is tailored to more of an actual adult audience. That's a little more mature compared to some of the stuff that we have on the channel. So feel free to check that out. That one is up in full. And that's a first draft. It will be edited and changed as we go forward here, including some character name changes. So when the second book comes out, please don't be shocked. There will actually be a changed character name. It'll make sense when we get there. Kylido's Corner says, I have listened to the first chapter of Eric S. I love that you guys are shortening it already. It's an obnoxious name, and I did that on purpose. Looking forward to what comes next. Thank you. My goal is every 2 weeks, so we'll see what happens. If I maintain that, depends how busy I am. With, obviously, we moved, and then everything going on in my actual day job. See what happens. Flick Street Productions says, I had a feeling Eric Schwabington was yours. I got that Percy Jackson vibe from the chapter title. Can't wait to read more chapters when they come up. Thank you. Alex Sheridan Gaming and Music Channel says, funny thing, Jealous of the Gods, Chalice of the Gods, comes directly after Blood of Olympus in the publishing order. Once you're done with Blood of Olympus, do Chalice of the Gods and then the Apollo series. Yeah, that's not how they were published, but that's the chronological order. The new Percy Jackson books come before Trials of Apollo, even though they were written after. It's a prequel. Flick Street Productions says, have you seen the Zucker Abrams parody classic Airplane? I saw it and I loved it. Yes, I'm very familiar with Airplane. Feel free to keep asking questions in the chat. I have no idea how long we're going to go tonight. Like I said, it was kind of impromptu. I do want to talk about just kind of the future of content on both here and Patreon. Obviously, with the move, things got delayed a bit. I wanted to be done with a few things in August that I didn't get to. But in terms of what is coming next that is not already out for people on the channel, over on Patreon, we just finished the Sword of Summer, which is the first book in the the Magnus Chase series. Is, of course, on this channel, but we are ahead of about 28 days over on the other channel. We've started book 2 now, if you guys want to check that out. We've also finished Breisinger, which is the third book in the Inheritance Cycle, or the Aragon series. That is available in full over on Patreon. Once we're done here with Insurgent on this channel, then we'll move to Breisinger. It will be available for full over on Patreon and Vimeo too. And then, of course, after that, now we've moved on to the Scorch Trials, which is book 2 of the Maze Runner series. If you guys want to skip ahead of the channel, feel free to subscribe to the Patreon for $5 a month or more. You get to skip ahead by about 28 or more days. And that's just, like I said, $5 a month or more. You can use the link in the channel bio, or just go to patreon.com/echowyrm. After that, we're looking at Keeper of the Lost Cities. I don't have a release date at the moment. I'm about halfway through the recording of it, but coming out hopefully sometime in the next month. Keeper of the Lost Cities, that's the first book in the series of the same name. Then Scent, which is book 2 of the Missing series. The first book is called Found. I did that about a year ago. And then we're working on some of the Percy Jackson side books. So Percy Jackson's Greek Heroes, Greek Gods. In addition to Percy Jackson, I think I lost something there. My apologies. I think my stream cut out there for a second. In addition to Percy Jackson, Greek Gods, and Greek Heroes, also doing something like the Brooklyn House Magician's Manual, the Let me see if I can fix that. My apologies. Okay, sorry about that. As far as I can tell, we should be okay in terms of our bit rate at the moment. I don't know where yours cut out, but I did mention we are streaming everything using my phone's hotspot. So after Percy Jackson's Greek Gods and Greek Heroes, we'll also be doing the Kane Chronicles Brooklyn House Magician's Manual, as well as just continuing the series that we've already started on the channel. So Kylitos Corner says, someone made a comment that Eric Schwabington also had some Artemis Fowl inspiration. I'm making that a point to check it out. I got a bit of a synopsis from a review of the movie, and I'm intrigued. Yeah, oh, Artemis Fowl, yeah. I was like, they have not made a movie of my book, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, Artemis Fowl, the movie is not a very good adaptation. The book is very good, but if you are a fan of the book, the movie is not very good. But I really enjoy the books. I've only read the first 2, but hopefully continuing with the third one sometime before Christmas. Flick Street Productions says, what is your favorite moment in Airplane? Mine was the opening scene where the announcers begin arguing. My favorite skit in Airplane is when the 2 African-American gentlemen on the plane get sick, and the stewardess has no idea what they're saying because they speak jive. And the old lady tells the stewardess that she speaks jive. And then basically this old woman and these 2 black guys go back and forth speaking jive, which is basically the 70s version of African-American vernacular English. It's very funny. Looking at my shelf here and things coming up on the channel, I hope when I click over it doesn't kill my bit rate here. Obviously, Children of Dune, we're about halfway through. So hopefully, Children of Dune, I can continue and finish very, very soon. There are some additional chapters that are up on a channel called Echowyrm Dune. If you guys want to check it out, our Dune content will slowly be making its way back to YouTube. Like I said, the channel is called Echowyrm Dune. After that, People of Sparks, which is the second book in the Children of Ember series. I just got done with the second book in the Giver series, which is called Gathering Blue. Very, very similar books. If you're familiar with either book, it might make more sense. But yeah, Gathering Blue, which is the second book in the Giver series, is already out, just came out. And then I am almost done with the People of Sparks, the second book in the City of Ember series. After that, Camp Half-Blood Confidential, I think, is the only... Well, there's the Magnus Chase one, too. But in terms of Percy Jackson's side books, I think Camp Half-Blood Confidential is the last side book I don't have finished. And then, of course, we're less than a month away from the release of Nico D'Angelo Book 2. Nico D'Angelo Book 1 will eventually make its way back to YouTube by way of a daily chapter book over on that Echo Wirm Rick Riordan channel. And then once the new book comes out, we'll do a daily chapter of the Court of the Dead, which is Nico Book 2. Are you excited for the new 21 Pilots album? I am. Another thing, I have a second channel. I have a lot of channels. But I have a channel that's not related to audiobook content. If you guys want to check it out, it's called Here's the Deal. I think if you just look up Here's the Deal _YT, you should be able to find it. Or just look up Here's the Deal Black Mirror. I believe it's the first thing that pops up. I don't know how many views it has at this point. It's a non-audiobook channel that I do. It's basically just long-form video essays, some sports content that I do. You guys can scroll through. There's a whole bunch of different playlists. But I do have a series, a retrospective series on 21 Pilots, where I basically go through the history of each album cycle for the band and rank every song at the end. And I have done 3 of them of their what will be 8 albums. I have done Blurry Face, Trench, and Scaled and Icy, and I'm hoping to have my Clancy video recorded and out by the time that The Breach comes out, which is their next album. One more airplane question. My favorite running gag is when Ted talks about his old relationship with his ex-girlfriend. The passenger he tells it to tries it. Yeah. My favorite gag in the movie. I don't know if there's a running gag that's my favorite. I also really like the clearance, Victor. Everything that takes place in the cockpit is very, very funny. Toledo's Corner says, I'm sad that Max Verstappen has been mathematically eliminated from the championship in F1. I knew it wasn't going to last forever, but the writing was on the wall. McLaren is dominating now. Next year's a new year. If you guys are familiar with F1, next year is the first year in basically a rules and design change. They have a whole new car that is very, very different. All the regulations are very, very different next year. And that typically, when that happens every 5 to 15 years, that typically means that whatever the dominating team was in the previous era will not be as strong as another team that has basically taken this season to dive. It's kind of like a draft year, right? Where you tank to get the best outcome out of the next year, except it's not guaranteed in F1. And so say a team, this is a very bad example because they're absolutely not going to win it next year, but say a team like Alpine has a really, really bad year this year. They know they're going to be bad. They have no chance of catching up to any of the other teams. And so they'll basically take this year as a buffer year where they do the bare minimum of the current regulations and they look ahead to what the rules are going to be for next year and try to make the best car in advance while all these other teams are currently putting all of their money to making this year's car very good. My guess is that next year McLaren will not win the title, nor will Red Bull. I think we're actually going to see Ferrari do very well, but I would be surprised if Mercedes didn't step back up into the top 2 or 3 next year. I think Mercedes is putting a lot of effort, especially with just individual drivers. I don't know if Kimi quite has it in him yet, but George Russell has been absolutely consistent. But yeah, it's very interesting to see a new team take over at the end of a current rules cycle. the way that McLaren has overtaken Red Bull at the end here. Usually you'd see McLaren take over once the rules change. Whose kit are you wearing? This, I think it's a Thomas Müller kit, who obviously is no longer at Bayern Munich, but just signed with Vancouver. Vancouver Whitecaps, I should clarify, not Vancouver FC. Are you excited for college football to start tomorrow? Yeah, I'm a huge Texas fan. So tomorrow we play the noon game against Ohio State, which I genuinely don't think we'll win, but it'll be a good game, and I think the rest of the season looks really promising for the Longhorns, so we'll see. I still think they'll make the playoff pretty easily. I think Arch Manning has a really, really solid season ahead of him, but this first week is going to be really tough. Kylito's Corner says, how much longer do you think Lewis Hamilton will stick around? Good question. I don't know, honestly, how long his Ferrari contract is. I would say he probably sees the Ferrari contract out and then retires. Or if he somehow gets a championship. I don't see it happening. I think his glory days are over. But if he somehow gets a championship, I think he'll pull a Peyton Manning or a Nico Rosberg and retire on the spot. How many kits do you own? Good question. I can't quite see them all in the closet next to me. Bayern, Wycombe Wanderers, I own 2 kits of theirs. Chelsea, I own 2 kits. Real Madrid, AS Roma, DC United, Pacific FC. I think I own a Czech national jersey for some reason, so probably 10. Flickstreet Productions says, how far is your old house from your new house? About 2 miles, which in the town I live in is about a 10 to 12 minute drive. So it's roughly on the same main street, which is really nice. We can just take that from one to the other. We don't have to anymore. Obviously, we're moved now. But yeah, moving is very fun, especially if you own houses. It goes from a lot of stuff in a larger space than an apartment to a new one of the same type. And especially if you don't get to move all of your stuff into the new house right away, it can be a chore trying to figure out where to store everything. But very excited. My son really, really likes it. What is your favorite thing about doing YouTube? Good question. I probably overstate this, but I really enjoy the community aspect of it. So like doing these live streams is honestly my favorite part of having a YouTube channel, or just going through the comments and responding to people, or when the Discord is really active, which it hasn't been recently. So come on, guys, step it up. But just the community aspect. I enjoy reading. I do this not necessarily for you guys, but more for me and my family. But obviously it's grown into something bigger than us, and I really appreciate the way that you guys respond to things. So definitely the community aspect of it. Alex Sheridan says, have you ever seen Hobbs and Shaw? There's a funny part where one guy says F4, F3, F2, FU. I have seen Hobbs and Shaw. I'm a big wrestling fan, so the fact that Roman Reigns was in a movie, I had to go see it. Son of Shadows asks, what inspired you to start recording audiobooks? I've told this story quite a few times, and I'm happy to share it again. I got in an accident a few years ago around Christmas time when my wife was pregnant with my first kid. And long story short, I almost lost the entirety of my face and was very lucky that I didn't go deaf or blind. But I had basically something exploded next to me and embedded itself in my face for about a month. And if you've ever been in kind of a, not necessarily a life or death situation, but absolutely could have been a life or death situation if anything had been different, it really just gets you thinking about things. And one thing that I started thinking about was my legacy, especially with a newborn on the way. And I started thinking about things that I could leave behind for my kids in the event that I wasn't so lucky in an accident like that. And one thing that I really treasured about my own childhood with my parents was being able to read with them at night. And so if something were to happen to me, even now, I decided to create kind of a backlog of me reading for my kids. And with that, I started with like books that I love and grew up with. So Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, Chronicles of Narnia, and created a backlog of things and was kind of inspired to post it on YouTube by a couple friends. And it blew up because of the Percy Jackson TV show. And I never expected it to be as big as it is. But yeah, very, very weird how things have developed when really this was all just for my kids. Flickstreet Production says, is the new house bigger than the old house? Yes. Our family is growing, and we didn't have enough space in the old house, and so we moved a little further from downtown, but that tends to happen as you get older and start to grow your families. So we really like where we're at, and we really like our neighbors. So what is your favorite football team? If you mean like association football, it's not Bayern Munich, it's actually Wycombe Wanderers. But in terms of like American football, I'm a Green Bay Packers fan. And so this week has been a very good week for me. If you're Canadian, my favorite Canadian team is the BC Lions. I was in fact wearing a BC Lions sweatshirt earlier. Do you follow any other sports? I grew up playing hockey. I'm from a hockey family. I had two brothers that played juniors up in Canada. Another brother could have. He decided to play baseball instead. And my athletic career is a very long story. Not because I was good, but because... Long story. I still play men's league hockey, and so hockey's a pretty big part of my life. I'm a Vancouver Canucks fan. Cautiously optimistic about this season. More excited for the Olympics, which are coming up next year in the spring. But in terms of stuff that I watch, really into soccer, really into football. I like baseball. I'm a big Milwaukee Brewers fan. I'm having a wonderful time this season as a fan. I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but I had a lot of hope there in July. And then I've been really getting into non-traditional sports, or at least non-traditional American sports. My son and I watched a lot of rugby last year and a lot of cricket, to the point that he no longer wants to play baseball with Dad. He wants to play cricket with Dad. So, Ellie Lattice. Sorry, my text on my computer is really, really small right now. Ellie Lattice says, the second season of the Percy Jackson series comes out in December, I believe. Yes, that is the latest news that I heard. I don't believe they've started filming season 3 yet, but it is greenlit, and they have cast everybody for season 3. So season 3 is happening. We'll see if things go well for season 2. Kylito's Corner says, I was a Green Bay fan for a while now. I follow Baker Mayfield. I will still root for Green Bay to succeed. I kind of like the Chiefs and also have a sentimental attachment to Dallas. Interesting. It's a very eclectic group of teams. Alex Sheridan says, I'm actually excited for the second season of Percy Jackson. For the last 2 years, I've been saying I'm cautiously optimistic, simply because the first season was enjoyable, but I thought had a lot of faults. And so, for example, I'm going to compare the Percy Jackson TV show with the Avatar live-action TV show that came out roughly around the same time, a little afterwards. With the Avatar TV show, I didn't think it was very good. I don't think a lot of people thought it was very good. But I really was excited because of the changes that they made and wanted to see where the show would go with season 2, because I think they could have the things that I didn't like about it, I thought could be fixed going forward, because it seemed like the momentum was moving in a correct direction by the end of the season. Whereas with the Percy Jackson TV show, the cracks really started to show by the end of the season with the changes that they made and the pacing issues and especially with the filming schedule. That I'm way more excited for Avatar season 2, even though the first season was bad, than I am about Percy Jackson season 2, even though I thought this first season was decent, if that makes any sense. And part of that might be I don't like Sea of Monsters. Like, this might be a hot take to a lot of you, because some people really like Sea of Monsters. In my personal opinion, I think Sea of Monsters is the worst Percy Jackson book. And I think that includes the new ones. Like, if I look at Chalice of the Gods and Wrath of the Triple Goddess, I think I enjoy both of them more than Sea of Monsters. Kylito's Corner is a boomer sooner. Yeah, that's too bad. Alex Sheridan says, don't forget about Jack and Annie too. Yeah, Magic Treehouse is an interesting one in terms of the future on the channel, simply because I recorded almost all of them, and this is my own fault. This is absolutely my own fault, and if it's popular enough, I will absolutely go back and re-record them. But I recorded basically, I want to say there's like 70 total books. I think I had 55 finished. And due to my own non-foresight, the Magic Treehouse books are the only recordings of mine that I didn't save on my computer. Once I started re-uploading them on a certain channel that no longer exists. And so I am missing about 20 of my recordings. And so I have all like the first 35 maybe, and then there's a whole bunch missing. And so I will record the new one. I just got the new one. I have a plan to record it very, very soon. And I'll probably then spot my way around the ones that I have not yet recorded, and then eventually go back to the ones that I did record, but the recordings no longer exist, if that makes any sense. That's entirely my error. It just is a bit of a soul-crushing thing when you have to go back and redo a lot of work that you did. Flick Street Productions says, Daphne Keane from Logan is playing Artemis in Percy Jackson Season 3. I didn't know that. Thoughts on that? I think Daphne Keane is a fantastic actress. Her backstory fascinates me. She has a very similar backstory to, who am I thinking of? Anya Taylor-Joy, where, like, their nationality is kind of all over the place because they partially grew up in Britain, they partially grew up in Spain. Anya Taylor-Joy partially grew up in Argentina. So it's like, I'm more fascinated by their backstories than anything, but that's just me being a geography nerd. But I really liked her in Logan, and I have been very impressed with her in all of the other stuff that I've seen her in. So I think that's a perfect casting. I think she fits the description very, very well. Kylito's Corner says, what are your thoughts on Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe book versus 2005 movie? There were a couple parts I felt the book did better, but overall I favor the 2005 movie. Yeah, me too. Simply because I think the 2005 movie was specifically made with a modern audience in mind. And I don't mean that negatively. I mean that when you read the book, a book that was written in 1950, the pacing feels like it was made for an audience in 1950. And even then, there are some things that when you read it, some things just kind of happen, and it's not like the story really progresses the way the scene I'm specifically thinking of is the Santa scene. It's a very cute scene, it's a very fun scene, but the pacing of the Santa scene is weird and kind of comes at a point where it just kind of comes out of nowhere, and then they get their weapons, and then the final battle happens. But I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of the Santa scene. And I think they did it a lot better in the film version. I think the pacing was a lot better. I personally have always favored Prince Caspian, the movie, but the first one was very, very well made. Alex Sheridan says, I do not know where Wrath of the Triple Goddess takes place, but I know it takes place after the events of Chalice of the Gods, but in the book side of things, I don't know where to put it in my collection. All of the new Percy Jackson books, the Senior Year Adventures trilogy, takes place between Heroes of Olympus and Trials of Apollo. So it goes Blood of Olympus, 3 new Percy Jacksons, Trials of Apollo. probably wrap things up in about 5-10 minutes here if you guys have any more questions you want me to answer tonight. This was just kind of an experiment. I know it's a Friday night. I just was excited that my studio was set up enough for me to do this, so I wanted to try it. We'll probably do another live stream. Let's see, 2 weeks from yesterday would be, let me do the math here. I think that is the 11th of September. So if we want to shoot for a live stream on September 11th, let's shoot for that. How are you going to decorate the wall behind you? Good question. Ideally, right now, I'm sitting about 2 feet from that wall. And it's about a 16-foot room. And I think in a perfect world, I would get a standing mount for a camera. I would move it to the center of the room. And I would put a chair in that corner next to the fish tank there. And I would record in a reclining chair with a stand-up microphone. Simply because I think the sound quality would be better, and I think my enjoyment of it would be a lot better, so that I'm not leaning over a desk reading audiobooks the way I've been doing for 2 years. I think if I sit in a recliner and do it, I think I'd have a lot more fun. So in terms of decorations then, because that's the wall that I'd be next to, I'd have to put sound paneling on it to absorb sound. So it'll probably be like the stereotypical podcast live stream soundproof paneling, with the different like soundproof absorption, and then it would reflect with the lights behind it. So we'll see. I might put up some of my other artwork that was up before. Flick Street Production says, have you seen the 2019 version of Jane Austen's Emma, starring Anya Taylor-Joy, Mia Goth, Johnny Flynn, and Bill Nye? No, I have not seen Emma. I've read Emma. I've never seen that version of it, but I'm aware of it to a certain extent. Kylito's Corner says, how many books do the Pevensey siblings actually appear in the Narnia series? I heard that some parts of the third movies had elements from other books meshed together to make it better. I don't think so. From my memory, so I grew up with the BBC versions. The BBC in the late 80s, early 90s made 4 films. And it was basically the 3 that Disney ended up remaking, in addition to The Silver Chair they also did. And in both versions of Voyage of the Dawn Treader, I think both are very, very accurate in terms of the way they finish. I don't remember even in the Disney version anything being changed much from the source material. Off the top of my head, I don't think so. But in terms of how many how many books the Pevenseys appear in, it's kind of a tricky question, because as main characters versus as cameo characters, all of the Pevenseys except Susan show up in the last battle, very briefly. So if we're including the last battle, then Peter shows up in 3. Peter shows up in Lion the Witch, because all of them also show up in Horse and His Boy. I do forget that the Horse and His Boy exists. So Peter shows up in Lion the Witch and Wardrobe, Horse and His Boy, Prince Caspian, and The Last Battle. So Peter's 4. Susan shows up in the middle 3. Lion the Witch and Wardrobe, Horse and His Boy, and Prince Caspian. Edmund shows up in then 4. Lion the Witch and Wardrobe, Horse and His Boy, Prince Caspian, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and Last Battle. So that's 5. And then Lucy also shows up in 5. So Lucy and Edmund in 5, Peter in 4, Susan in 3. And then if you count Eustace, he's kind of a Pevensey. He's not really. He's a cousin. Eustace shows up in 3? Did he show up in the Last Battle? I can't remember. Yeah, he shows up in the final 3. Flick Street Productions says, have you seen Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer? Yes, I have. Alex Sheridan, says, I suggest going in order for the Merlin's missions, so that way it's in order and not out of order. Well, like I said, I've already done a lot of them, and they don't exist anymore. So for my own personal sake, I will probably not be going in order. Maybe when I redo the ones, then I'll read them in order. But it doesn't really matter if you read the Magic Treehouse books in order once you get to the Merlin Magicians books. They kind of correlate to each other, and they're kind of grouped in fours, but it really doesn't matter. Each book is very, very standalone. Sorry for the state of my voice. I do believe I'm coming down with something. Are you doing any recording tonight? Yes. I think I'm 2 days in advance of what's out on Patreon, which is kind of a decent buffer. But I'll do probably a chapter of Magnus Chase and then a chapter of Scorch Trials and then go to bed. What is your favorite book that you've read on the channel so far? Favorite book? It's a tricky question. My favorite book that I have recorded, I really enjoyed recording The Giver. I really enjoyed recording Harry Potter books 4 and 6. I also really enjoyed recording the Spiderwick Chronicles series. But yeah, those would probably be my main answers. Matt Zucker says, nice finally seeing you in the evening time. I don't know what time zone you're in. I typically do my live streams in the evening. This is significantly later than I usually do it. About 5 more minutes and then we'll wrap things up here. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. Matt Zucker says, can I somehow bully you to upload or bribe you to upload the Dune book so I can download it? Have YouTube Premium the way I was trying to listen to them like that on downloads, but now they're gone. Slowly but surely, they'll be making their way back in a channel called Echo Wirm Dune. There's a bunch of chapters in the 3rd book up right now. Excuse me. One thing about moving is you get used to the smells and allergens in your house, and then you move into a completely new house and it kills you. But yeah, Echo Wirm Dune, feel free to look for it. Slowly but surely it'll make its way back. Alex Sheridan says, it sucks that we're not getting the new Percy Jackson book, but I'm glad that we're getting another Nico D'Angelo book. Let's see here. Yeah, I think all of us expected... So, I've said this before, and this is just me being me, but I expected because of the way that they announced Wrath of the Triple Goddess, basically as soon as Chalice of the Gods came out, the fact that we didn't get more information on Percy Jackson 8 was really kind of concerning and weird. And so, for a while, it was like, okay, maybe they're pushing it off for like a seasonal reason, because Wrath of the Triple Goddess takes place around Halloween. And my theory was Percy Jackson 8 was going to be a Christmas book. Not to have any like Christian themes necessarily, but because the only winter Percy Jackson book we really have is Titan's Curse. And it doesn't really, it feels like a winter book, but it doesn't feel like a Yuletide festive Christmas type book. And I think that'd be a very interesting thing to have or encounter in the Percy Jackson universe. And so I was really hoping that we'd get a new Percy Jackson book by Christmas. And then, of course, I don't know how many months ago, they announced that they're skipping this year for Percy Jackson. We'll get Percy Jackson 8 next year. Instead, they're doing Nico Book 2 this year, which I think makes a lot of sense in terms of marketing, in terms of money, in terms of what kind of materials and content is making money right now. I think it makes a lot of sense to do Nico Book 2 over Percy Jackson Book 8. Flickstreet Production says, did you know that Robert Downey Jr. calls Oppenheimer his favorite and best film to date? I agree. I love his performance. What are your thoughts on his performance? Well, he won an Oscar, so I can't say it's bad by any means. I don't know. I'm not a huge Robert Downey Jr. fan in terms of just, I think I don't know how to describe it. I don't know. I don't know how to word my thoughts on Robert Downey Jr. He's always been more of a blockbuster type actor than a to me, like, Christian Bale can do both and has done both. Robert Downey Jr. has obviously won awards for his acting. But I think even in Oppenheimer, he's doing his style. Whereas, like, I mentioned Christian Bale. Heath Ledger is a great example. Who are other actors that I'm thinking of? Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, all of them kind of transcend their own styles to be very, very different in the roles they play. Edward Norton. You might hate his acting, but Jared Leto does the same stuff. Where when I'm watching a Robert Downey Jr. film, I see him and I go, oh, it's Robert Downey Jr. Whereas, like, if I watch Christian Bale as Dick Cheney, that's not Christian. Like, that's not Batman. That's absolutely not Batman. That's Dick Cheney. So, I don't know. I like it, but I'm much more of a remove the actor from the role type of guy. And I can't do that with any of the Marvel. I can do it with Chris Hemsworth because I've seen him in a lot of really, really good non-Marvel content. I can't really do it with Chris Evans. I can't really do it with Chris Pratt. I can't really do it with Robert Downey Jr. So it's hard for me to watch that and see Robert Downey Jr. as as whatever the first name of his character is, Strauss, instead of seeing him as Iron Man, if that makes any sense. I don't disagree that it's his best performance. I can't think of any Robert Downey Jr. performance that's better. I think he's probably right. That probably is his best performance. I did think he was very good in Iron Man 3. Kylito's Corner says, what is your opinion on how Ares was portrayed in the show? I personally liked every moment he was on screen. Yeah, I don't have an actual reason to say I didn't like it, except for the fact that I'm a wrestling fan. So every time Ares was on screen, I could not take it seriously because I'm a wrestling fan. And I'm watching it. Basically, my thoughts on Ares in the show are everyone else's thoughts on Hermes, right? So the thing I just said about Robert Downey Jr. being Tony Stark, like, if Robert Downey Jr. showed up and he was playing Zeus, it'd be like, oh, that's not Zeus, that's Tony Stark. And everyone said that with Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's like, that's not Hermes, that's Hamilton. For me, when I was watching and all of a sudden Ares pops up on screen, I go, am I watching AEW right now? Like, why is the Cope on the screen? But no, I actually did think Adam Copeland's performance was very good. And I liked the way they took the character. I just, as a wrestling fan, I could not take it seriously. It'd be like, she's already done this in multiple things, but it's like when Taylor Swift shows up in Cats. It doesn't matter how good her performance is, even though it was Cats. Like, you look at it and you're going to go, oh, that's Taylor Swift. Kylito's Corner says, I really thought Bradley Cooper killed it as Rocket and Michael Rooker slayed it as Yondu. Yeah, I agree. Especially, like, if you didn't know that Bradley Cooper was Rocket, you'd never know. Bradley Cooper is another one of those. Like, his image is very, very, like, you know who Bradley Cooper is, but he's very good at going outside of his roles, if that makes any sense. Matt Zucker says, I'm pretty sure you said before that you'd be reading the Wheel of Time series at some point. Do you know when you're going to start doing that? I have no idea at the moment. It hasn't been requested a ton, but it is on my list. So I could probably give you a better estimate in about a month or two as to when I'm planning on starting something like that. I think with that, we'll start to wrap things up here. Just a reminder, all of the stuff that has been on our channel and probably will be on the channel in the future, is still available over on Vimeo and Patreon. There are links in our channel bio if you want to check it out. Certain things will slowly be making their way back to YouTube. Like I said, look for Percy Jackson, look for Dune by looking for Echo Worm, Rick Riordan or Echo Worm Dune. Someone's started uploading our Harry Potter content, which is awesome. If you guys have never seen Harry Potter or read Harry Potter, I did the entire series. Like I said, you can find it on YouTube. You can also find it on Patreon and Vimeo. And there's plenty of stuff still coming up over on Patreon and Vimeo. You don't have to pay for Patreon to get everything. It also, if you do pay, you get to jump ahead by about a month. So everything's available to you for free. Still available using the links in the channel bio. And with that being said, check out Eric Schwabington. Stay tuned for more original content with the Radiation Effect series. And I'll hope to see you guys back here sometime very, very soon.